Hey guys, it's Kat again. So today is going to be our first education video. In my channel, you're going to see that there are education videos, there are living videos on how to reduce your carbon footprint, and basically anything else that you guys suggest or have questions about. We might do some Q&A ones later on down the road and figuring things out. So today is our first education video. So when I did my welcome video, I did kind of explain that I did start this channel based on my professor making a project assignment saying take conservation into action, and so I decided to make this. So my first few videos will be about corals. So today I'm going to be teaching you about corals and why it's important that we do something about them and do something about them quickly, because they are facing some dangers, and we'll get into that as well. So stick with me through this. We'll learn a bunch of new things together, and I made a list of what I want to go over. So we're going to start today's education video. This whole series won't just be about corals, but that is the foundation. That's kind of the starting runoff on how we're going to be doing this. So today we're getting into corals, and I want to start off first with why, because I feel like if we just go into all the scientific stuff first, might lose some of you. So I want to start off with why it's important that we make these changes. So coral reefs provide a lot, and that's a big thing about any ecosystem is we pull resources. That is the foundation of everything we do, is resources from the earth. And so we pull resources, and coral reefs have 25% of the biodiversity, which mean out of all the variety of species out there in the ocean, coral reefs have about 25% of all the species in the ocean. So there's a lot of species related to coral reefs, and without coral reefs, those species would not be able to exist. That is their home. So imagine that all our resources were burned to the ground. We would not make it very far without resources. So imagine that the same way for corals. So the resources is what I really want to focus on first. This is why it's so important for us to save corals. Aside from just generally caring about the environment, even if you don't care about the environment at all, this is why you should care. One, we get a lot of food resources from coral reefs. A lot of the food we eat gets brought in from reefs because the fish live on there. There's so much life. We can feed on that. So that's a big thing. Tourism brings a lot of money to economies. Even when you like traveling, a lot of time you want to go traveling, you want to go snorkeling, you want to see the reefs. Those are beautiful. How would you feel if you went down to the Keys, or you went to tropical islands and you wanted to go snorkel, and you looked in the water and you saw death and sand? That's it. Nothing living, nothing's alive. It would be pretty sad. So you want to go, you want to see a good time, you want that to help the economy if people are traveling there as well, because what's put in the economy comes about. It all cycles around. There is a give and take type situation. So spending can be good on certain things, just kind of depends. So food, tourism, medications, you guys. We get so many medications. I literally have a list here. So labor. If you're in labor, some of those medications that make it easier to give birth, make the process less painful, those come from resources on coral reefs. Okay, could you imagine going to give birth and being like, all right, give me like the pain medication so this doesn't feel like I'm being torn from the inside out? And they're like, sorry, we can't get those anymore because the resources for them are gone. You have nothing. You're just going to lay here and rip apart, sober, awake, feeling everything. Ouch. Other ones, let's see. So there is also cancer. So treatments for most cancers, really big ones, are going to be breast cancer and lymphoma. The treatments for those two specifically are really found on coral reefs. Maybe not from the corals themselves, but from things that live on the coral reefs. That's a big key part to remember. So if the corals are gone, so is everything that lives on it or lives around it. All that biodiversity that I referenced in the beginning, that's all gone. And these medications, those resources come from it. Other ones, arthritis, asthma, ulcers, those things all come, medications for those all come from coral reefs. Various diseases, bacterial infections, viruses, heart disease, Alzheimer's, guys. That's a scary one. That is a really scary one. If you know anyone with Alzheimer's, you should really care about coral reefs surviving, because that's not easy. And I'm sorry if any of you have experienced that. And if you're willing to share your stories, like I said, I want this to really be a growing channel, growing in education, us learning together. And so if you don't mind sharing stories, I would love to hear them. If you have anyone who suffered from any of these conditions, sharing that information can inspire people to care about coral reefs, from the sheer fact that that's going to make sure that we still have the resources for those medications, because it really does matter that much. Products, so things like cosmetics, guys, makeup. I know a lot of you girls out there and guys wear makeup every day, all right? Even I like some mascara. And that comes from coral reefs. Hair products, skincare products. You guys all want to look young forever. I want to look young forever, all right? A lot of that, again, comes from coral reefs. A lot of those resources for those products come from coral reefs. And if they're not around anymore, we're just all going to get wrinkly, have dry, brittle hair, and no makeup to cover it. Sounds awesome, right? I'll just be monkeys running around terrifying each other. That'll be stellar. Supplements. So we do get some of those daily supplements that you take, such as calcium from coral reefs. It also protects. That is a big thing, you guys. Hurricanes have gotten worse due to climate change. I know that's a big word. A lot of people don't want to talk about that. I think that's a topic that we will save for its own individual video. But hurricanes are getting worse. They're getting awful. I think all the hurricanes I've heard about lately, the smallest one was a Category 4. You guys, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. But coral reefs actually help diffuse some of that wave energy when it's crashing in. So that way we don't take as much damage. They're trying to protect us there, you guys. So protecting those coral reefs can help protect our home when those hurricanes come in. If they're not there, then there's nothing to help diffuse it. We're just going to take all that brunt. All of it. And it's going to destroy way more than it would if those corals were still there. Other things, if we're taking down the corals, so the coral will build a structure coming up from the ocean, and that stabilizes the land. And then we can build, you guys, like those beach houses, those hotels on the beach. I know you guys love those. That all goes back to the tourism. But without that coral reefs there, so not only do people not have anything to look at, but it's not holding that structure, so the sand starts to just kind of crumple down and the land starts to crumple down, and then those hotels, those beach homes, they're not going to make it. Enough time passes by, they're just washing away. So keep that in mind. So these are the reasons, you guys. Medication, traveling, homes, food, supplements, daily products, your makeup, your skincare, your hair care, all of that stuff comes from coral reefs. That is why, even if you don't just have a genuine care for the ocean, that is why you should still want to preserve it, just so that way you can still take in these daily things that you love. I know everybody out there has something that they enjoy on a daily basis or need, so keep in mind a lot of that comes from the coral reefs, and without those, you're not going to get those resources. They're not going to be there anymore. Simple said, done, gone. Keep that in mind. So that being said, we're going to start getting into more of the scientific education stuff. So if you just came to hear why it matters, you don't care about the scientific, you just want a reason why to try to make some changes, then there you go. If you want to get into some more of the scientific stuff, that's where we're about to go now. So I'm going to start this off with, scientists have predicted that at the rate we're going right now, coral reefs will be fully extinct by the year 2050. That's 30 years from now. Completely gone from the planet. No bringing it back. Extinct. Coral reefs will be gone. That's terrifying. So in my lifetime, and in a lot of your guys' lifetime, you're going to watch coral reefs go extinct. And there's a video out there, I can't remember what it's called, I will write it in the description though, that this person made a video of a young girl in like 2060. It's a staged video where she talks about how she goes and she has a conversation with her grandpa. So imagine this is like your granddaughter and they're talking to you years down the road, and they're coming up and they're like, hey, so we heard that these things called coral reefs that did so much for you guys are now extinct and you guys didn't do anything about it. And it really is a sad video, but it does bring a lot into perspective, and I highly encourage you guys to watch it. So I will leave that in the description. It was actually my professor that showed us that video. I hadn't seen that one before. I've seen a lot. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen Chasing Corals, all that type of stuff, but I will link that video in because it kind of gives a little bit of a different perspective. So, like I said, coral reefs are projected to be extinct by 2050 unless changes are made. There is still hope if we can make changes now, but we have to do it together. So that is the biggest thing to remember. So when it comes to corals, there's two big things that are really injuring corals, and they stem from the same source. I'm sure you guys know what that is, and I'll tie it in at the end. The first thing I want to talk about is temperature rising. So temperature rising is happening purely from the CO2 emissions. They're cycling. We have this thing called a greenhouse effect, you guys. What that means is the temperature released reflects up and sends the temperature back down. Now that is a good thing. It keeps our planet more stabilized, so we're not just freezing from the outer space. It's recycling that heat and making it to where life can grow. However, we're putting excess heat into the atmosphere and it's cycling back down. Now the oceans absorb a lot of that. If the oceans weren't absorbing that, the planet would already be too hot for us to survive. Keep that in mind. The planet would be non-livable if the oceans weren't absorbing a majority of that heat we're putting off. That being said, it's warming up the water. So our oceans are rising in temperature. And a lot of people are trying to be like, oh, well, the average temperature is only rising like 2 to 4 degrees. The thing about corals, though, is they don't have internal temperature regulation. And what that means is, as humans, when we get cold, our body keeps heat. It uses energy to keep us warm internally. If it gets hot, we sweat to keep cool us down, stuff like that. So we can handle a wide range of temperature. That's something that's nice about being a terrestrial animal, which means land animal. Most marine animals aren't capable of that quite as much, except for like marine mammals. They have some extra adaptations. Corals are very dependent on the temperature around them, so they have a range that they can live. So when people are trying to say, oh, these 2 to 4 degrees, I don't see why that's a problem. Well, think about it. If your body temperature is 98 degrees, right? It goes up 2 degrees. You have a temperature. Something's wrong, okay? And sure, if you have a temperature for a few days and it's only a couple degrees higher than usual, the temperature breaks, you feel better, that's fine. Same with corals. If it stays hot for a few days, that's fine. The temperature drops back down, it's going to be okay. The problem is if you had a temperature and it stayed too high for too long, that's when it starts to really get to you. That's when it can cause serious damage to your body. And some people don't survive if the temperature stays too high for too long. That's why it's such a big deal to break temperature when people get sick. And say you are at 104, that's when the brain literally starts to cause damage that is irreversible. That is only 6 degrees higher than your normal body temperature. 2 degrees, something's wrong. 6 degrees, you're dying. Game over. Same thing with corals. So the temperature around them is what regulates them. If it's only a little high for a couple days, they can bounce back. It's like having a fever for a few days and going back down. But if it is too high, or it is too high for too long, then they can't survive that. No living organism can survive that. That's, like I said, if you had a 104, you're probably not going to survive unless it's healed really quick. Same with corals. If it's extremely high, they don't have as much of a time frame. If it's only a couple degrees high, they can go a few days, but then it needs to be brought back down. Just like you, if you have 100, 101 degree temperature, you can go for a little while, but if it goes for too long, it goes for weeks, months, you're not surviving it. It's, unless you're just on life support, but corals don't have that, guys. They don't have coral hospitals out there in the ocean. So that's really causing a lot of it. And what'll happen is the corals will get so stressed as well from the temperature that they release their zooxanthellae. So what that is, zooxanthellae is an algae, a plant, that the coral forms a symbiosis with. So symbiosis is basically when two organisms need each other to live. So two life forms need each other to live. So what is happening is the coral intakes these these plants, and the plants create photosynthesis, creates food for the corals, and that way the corals can continue living. If it gets too hot, just like when you have a fever, certain things stop working properly, blah, 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 your body goes through stress, and so you got to break that temperature so you can try to get everything back down. They spit out their zooxanthellae because they're stressed, and now they don't have their primary food source. I mean, they can eat little bits here and there from particles, but zooxanthellae is their biggest way to get their food, get their nutrients, and they spit it out because they're so stressed just trying to recover from this heat, from this temperature, basically. So it's like they have a fever, and when they spit it out, now they can't eat. And that's called coral bleaching. And so when they spit it out, they no longer have the color in them, and you can see straight through to their skeleton underneath, because their tissue is just clear. All of that color leaves with those zooxanthellae. And now it doesn't have any food. It's overheat. It's got a temperature. And after bleaching, it's only a matter of a few days, and it dies. And the tissue starts to slough off the skeleton. And now a lot of the times when you guys are going to coral reefs, it's not actually coral reefs anymore. It's skeletons of what used to be and a bunch of algae overgrowth. And it's actually really sad to see that process. I highly encourage you guys to actually look that up. And I'll try to put together a video that actually shows those things going on. But it's hard to watch. The other thing I want to go over is also ocean acidification. Again, from CO2 emissions. So that CO2 comes into the ocean, binds wrong, and it causes the pH level to become more acidic. And when the ocean is too acidic, the corals can't build their skeleton. So their skeleton is made out of calcium carbonate. And this acidification makes it to where they can no longer build that calcium carbonate. So they already grow super slow. So all this destruction is not good on it anyway, because it's really hard for them to catch up. They just grow at such a slow rate. So they need everything that they can. Well, now if they can't even grow their skeleton, they have no way of growing. So if they can't build a skeleton, think about it. If you weren't able to build a skeleton as a kid, you probably wouldn't have survived. If you weren't able to keep your skeleton strong now, or repair it if something happened, like you broke a bone or something, just anything, and your skeleton was just degrading away because it's too acidic, you're probably not going to survive. And it's the same way for the corals. They can't survive this acidic condition because it's just degrading their skeleton away. And so you have the temperature causing the organism to not be able to eat. It has a temperature, it's stressing, and its skeleton is just going to smithereens. And the coral really doesn't stand a chance at this point. And so this all literally comes back to carbon dioxide emissions. Your CO2, your carbon footprint. I know you've heard the term before, carbon footprint. That is the key root of all of this. So that is, it's the key root of everything, guys. When those single-use products that lead to plastic and blah, 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 that's all causing more CO2, where there'd be less CO2 if we had reusable products. That CO2 is causing the global warming, it's causing the ocean acidification, it's causing all of these things. And also when we get into climate change, global warming, all that type of stuff in a separate video, a lot of people try to fight, well, if there's the going on, then why is there still winter? And bear in mind, the planet is round, okay? And so when the sun is, like, if you have a ball, I don't have a ball, I have this pumpkin. So the planet's round. If the sun is beaming here, then the farthest point is going to be warmer than up here. So it's still going to be snowing up here because it's going to take a while for it to warm all the way up to where it's always summer all the time at both the poles. That's extreme. We would not still be alive. It would literally be sweltering hot. There'd be no water on the planet. So yes, there's still going to be winters up here, guys. That's not how it works. So we will get into a video on how all that works too. I think people have this wrong idea that it's just the whole planet just turns one temperature and just rises. That's not how it works. It's completely different. That's why there's certain animals in certain regions. Everything's adapted different. And we will cover that in another video. So I know that's a big word and a lot of people are terrified of those words. So we will cover that. But yes, CO2 is the biggest challenge that our corals are facing, that our planet is facing. And we need to reduce our CO2, our carbon footprint, because that is what's killing the corals, killing everything. And it's going to get rid of all of our resources that we rely on as humans, our medication, our food, and even just the products we enjoy on a daily basis. It's going to be gone eventually because of CO2. And that's all there is to it. Just because it's not killing us now doesn't mean it's not going to later. And statistics show that it will eventually get there. So let's start with the corals. Let's reduce our CO2. Other things, of course, affecting corals, such as microplastics, dredging, overfishing, disease, and excess nutrients being released into the water, sedimentation. We can get into all that in another video. I really wanted to just kind of cover the core things that are affecting it, which is ocean acidification and temperature rising. And that all is linked back to CO2 emissions. So remember, carbon dioxide is the core of what is causing issues to our planet. And that's not to say that we shouldn't have carbon dioxide at all, because we need that in the cycle, but we have too much. We have way too much. That's like, it's good to have a piece of chocolate every now and then because it makes you happy, but if that's all you ate and you just ate lots and lots and lots of that every day, that's not good for you. So that's the same thing with CO2. We can't have this much excess, so we need to reduce it significantly, and that really is the core of all of this, and that is the biggest goal for all of this. So bear that in mind. I hope you learned something today. If you did, let me know below what you learned. If you have any questions, ask them down below. If you have any suggestions on what videos you want me to make next, let me know below. Start conversation, educate people, really let people know, because like I said, I think the hardest thing is people don't understand that we need these resources for them to continue to enjoy their daily lives. People are like, oh, I'm pro-human, I need this, that, and the other. Well, you get all that from nature. So even if you don't care about nature, just living your daily life, eating, having medications, caring about yourself and only yourself, if you want those things, those resources come from nature. So bear that in mind. Educate. That is the biggest thing. Make those changes. Reduce your carbon footprint. Try to reduce others if you can. And just try your best. Like I said, I don't expect anybody to be perfect. We're humans. I still do stuff that I'm like, why did I do that? And I don't expect anyone to be perfect, but reduce what you can, learn what you can, and educate. So hope you guys had a good time watching this video. Subscribe below, ask questions, leave comments. Let me know what you want to see next, and happy you guys stayed till the end. I know that was kind of a depressing video, but that's education. That's how we're going to learn. That's how we're going to evolve and change. So hopefully it won't always be depressing. One day maybe we can say that they're no longer critically endangered, and that'll be a happy day. But it starts with you. Remember that, and I will see you guys later. Have a great one. Bye.